All right, so welcome everybody to launching your first online course. Just a quick update or kind of background. This is part of the ongoing Web and Beyond webinars, which are marketing and managing your small business on the Web and Beyond series. And so launching your first online course is really for small business owners who are looking to do that first course, and they're looking for a way to be able to get that done. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ray Sidney Smith. I'm president of W3 Consulting, and I'm managing director of W3C Web Services, which is our affordable WordPress and web hosting company. We actually also do domain name registration services. We do Microsoft 365 licensing, Google Workspace implementation, all kinds of fun things there underneath web services. I also happen to be an Evernote certified consultant. If you know what Evernote is, it's a powerful note-taking software, and I happen to be a big fan of it. And then, of course, I am also the Google Small Business Advisor for productivity, and so that's where Google Workspace and other things come into play. And so I love digital marketing. I love talking about digital marketing and helping small businesses in that space. And today's agenda is no different. What we're going to be doing today is talking about what you will teach, really how to get yourself set up regarding the things you need to know to effectively go live for your first quality online course. We'll then go into what you will need in terms of the components for how you'll really set up your course and the components or requirements for doing all of that in terms of hardware and software. And then finally, we'll talk about promoting your course, how to really fill your course so that you actually have people show up and take your course. So we have a lot of material to cover in the time together, and so let us get started. First and foremost, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the way in which I came about doing my first online course. And it's really not my first online course. I'm kind of cheating here by saying it's my first online course, but I decided to actually teach my first online course and teaching Evernote, the new version, which Evernote went through in the end of 2019, first part of 2020, decided to re-archetype their system, basically rewrite the software from the ground up. And so they launched this new suite of products, both on desktop and mobile. And what I decided to do was to launch a course teaching that to Evernote users. I wanted to be able to help as both an Evernote certified consultant, but also as one of the Evernote regional leaders. And so there are 8 of us globally, and I'm one of the Evernote regional leaders for North America. And so I just thought it would be a fun way to exercise, kind of practice what I preached in terms of launching an online course. And so I'll give some examples as to how I did that in this presentation here, so you can kind of get an idea about what we're really talking about. And so the first thing I thought about when I thought about kind of what would I teach as it related to Evernote, the first thing that comes to mind, and is the thing that I want to impress upon you, is that you want to be able to have your audience have a transformation. It's really important for people to understand that they're going from where they are to the next step, to where you can help them go. And it's through that perspective that people will actually want to take your course. And this really requires you to think about, what is your goal for this course? That is your business goal, right? As a business owner, you need to think about, is this just revenue generation? Is this a course that I'm creating for lead generation, where I'm building up, so I'm going to give it away for free, basically have people come to the course, and then somewhere down the line, they're then going to be purchasing from me in some other capacity. So this is really a list building or a community building activity. And so that's a goal piece in mind. But the background, the real engine that runs here is transformation. What is the transformation that your audience is going to have by virtue of taking this course? And there are many different types of courses that one can take, right? You as a business owner could launch all kinds of courses. I'm going to talk about one specific type because I think it's the easiest and it's the most effective for a first online course. But you could do a self-study online course. You could do a live course. You could do a cohort-based course where people sign up for a particular period of time and follow along with you in real time, or self-study. You're releasing material at some particular time frame. But no matter what type of course you're launching, there needs to be a transformation. I need to go from not knowing how to use Evernote to knowing how to use Evernote in some basic fashion so that I'm able to execute what I want to inside of the application. So the transformation is really important here, and I want to make sure that we underscore it enough so that you understand that for whatever your business does, and maybe throw in the chat what it is that your business does do, and what is the transformation that you're trying to help your customers achieve. Because it's through that transformation that people will actually light up, because it's what's in it for them. And if the what's in it is, if the benefit from taking the course is that they get some kind of transformation from it, then they're going to be really excited to take that course. So you will ultimately decide on the course material in a couple of different ways. I like to think about this from the perspective of beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So once you've decided what the transformation is that you want your audience to have through your course, the first thing you really need to do thereafter is to basically write out everything you know about one particular subject. And so in your business, say you're a graphic designer, well, you want to get people to take your course to potentially come and hire you as the designer, but you kind of want to educate your audience maybe a little bit about that. So you might decide to hold a beginner, intermediate, or advanced course on how to design a logo, or how to lay out an effective digital ad, or how to lay out a magazine, or those kinds of things. And the idea is that people would see how difficult it is and then want to hire you, right? But you may be a life coach and you want to be able to do a course on how to become your best self in 90 days or less. That might be an interesting course for you to take. Either way, whatever the thing is that you want people to do in terms of transformation, I want you to sit down and I want you to outline everything you know on that subject that you would want to teach as an online course. This is a really effective method for being able to understand what you know and what you don't know, and where you would feel comfortable with being able to present a course. So once you've outlined everything you know about this particular subject, right, and it doesn't have to be a massive subject, it could be a very niche topic, and I actually recommend niching down. So if you say, okay, graphic design, well then it becomes logos, and maybe not just logos, but maybe figuring out how to design choosing your brand colors for your logo, right? That's something that you can teach, and it becomes a very critical, narrow space. Then you outline everything you know about choosing brand colors, and you outline that, right? Now, what you're going to do then, after you have outlined everything you know about that subject, you're now going to break it into 3 pieces. Now, I'll give you an example from my own world. So I decided to launch this Evernote course, and so I wrote down everything I knew about Evernote, right? Starting with the beginner materials. The beginning materials were really everything about the application, the Evernote's pricing plans, which types of plans you could have, what is Evernote, and what are the basic elements of Evernote. You know, we have notes, notebooks, stacks, we have tags, and we have all kinds of other pieces within the Evernote ecosystem. There's baseline materials for that. I then went into the next step and I thought, okay, well, once you really know how to use the application kind of functionally, let's start talking about all of the personal productivity methods that actually help you implement that tool in this particular way. And so then I wrote down, okay, well, if you're going to set up a Kanban board and in Evernote, how would you do that? If you were going to do getting things done in Evernote, how would you do that? If you were going to set up, say, a bullet journal in Evernote, how would you do that? So walking through those personal productivity items. Then I said, okay, well, in the advanced space, what I could do is I could actually teach everybody how to do business productivity workflows, right? Build out a human resources system, how to set up a customer service portal and a database for that, FAQs, how to launch a website, how to launch a blog or a podcast, all within Evernote, because you can do all of these things, extending it with integration partners. And so I wrote out all of that stuff, right? And so I sat down and I looked at it all and I was like, great. I could teach all of this in this particular course. All wonderful, all great material. I feel very comfortable with teaching all of it, but we all have to recommend the reality. We have to recognize the reality of the fact that you really, for a first online course, are biting off way too much if you try to teach everything. I call this the first third syllabus. And the first third syllabus is the idea that whatever you think is the totality of what you want to teach, whether it be in the beginner, intermediate, or advanced space, take the first third of whatever you outlined, and that's the course. And I've done this over and over and over again with clients. And what we tend to find is that people want to teach everything, when in reality, if you try to teach everything, you end up really teaching nothing. People get confused, people get overwhelmed, and what ultimately ends up happening is that you become a jack of all trades in teaching that material in that one course, but an ace of none. And people just don't learn as quickly or as fast as you think they might. So the first third syllabus practice is take everything you know about that one subject, whether it be in the beginner, intermediate, or advanced space, and take the first third, and that's what you're going to teach in your first course. Now, what I like to do then is to think about it from this perspective. That first third syllabus is going to be broken up into several weeks of material. This is going to be, for purposes of today, I would recommend a live course whereby you are going to present material just like we are here right now. You're going to have either slides in front of you or you on screen plus slides, and you are going to teach the first third as the syllabus. And the idea behind this is very simple. Just like climbing a mountain, you don't just climb up to the apex of Mount Kilimanjaro, right? You have to, go to the first base camp, have your body acclimate. You go to the next base camp, your body acclimates, and you keep doing that in stages. And that's how people learn. And if you just take someone, helicopter them up to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, they'll die, right? They'll hypoxia or whatever it is that happens, they will basically die very quickly if you take them right to the top of the mountain. What you really need to do is you need to slowly bring people up along the way so that they can learn effectively. What this means, though, is that as soon as you do that outline, you have figured out for yourself basically a whole series of courses that you can teach. And so this first third syllabus ends up being your first online course, but it doesn't have to be your last because you've already mapped out the others, which is really fantastic. I find this to be a really useful mechanism for being able to say, okay, as you're planning out the first third syllabus, you can say, oh, you know what? This actually goes into that later course. Oh, and this other piece goes into that course after that. And so now you have this wonderful arc of courses that you can do if you want to, but that first third syllabus is going to really help you hone in on it. So you can choose a number of weeks and you have some options. What I chose to do was to have 5 weeks in my course. I was going to teach a course every Monday at noon, and I did, and then have office hours on a couple days later, and that allowed people to play around inside of Evernote and then come back and ask questions, share their screen in an environment like Zoom where they could go ahead and do that, right? So we have an hour of learning in the introductory course, and in that beginner course we did an hour lecture, and then basically an hour and a half, I think I did, 90 minutes of office hours in essence. So people gained access to me for 2.5 hours each week over the course of those 5 weeks if they wanted to. So the first third syllabus really helps you understand that. The next step in that process is, after you've decided, okay, how many weeks would I reasonably need to explain this syllabus to people? Am I going to need 3 hours? Am I going to need 5 hours? Generally, people are not going to sit around for more than an hour of content, especially if you have to do intro and all kinds of, housekeeping and other kinds of running through agenda and then questions. So you really only have about 40 to 45 minutes per session of real content if you do it within an hour. So then if you look at the material, you can say, okay, well, this is going to take me 45 minutes, and this is going to take me another 45, and this is going to take me another 45, and so on and so forth. You can then figure out how many weeks you're going to really need. And weekly cadence tends to be the right amount of time between each item. You could, of course, condense that if you wanted to, but I tend to find that choosing a weekly cadence over the course of a few weeks and figuring out what that is usually the right amount of time. And so you can decide, you can do 5, 10, 15 weeks. That's the length of a typical U.S. university semester. So you have to decide how much material you have and how much you really need to go into in order to teach that particular material. But you then now have a syllabus and a timeline for what you're going to be teaching for that first online course, the first third syllabus. Now, what we want to do is just get the marketing pieces in place from that first third syllabus. So what I want you to do is once you've outlined the first third syllabus and you have the weeks scheduled out, right? You know what dates you're going to cover these things. If you're going to do office hours, great. If you're not, that's fine. And now you decide, okay, what is the marketing language that we need to use? What I'd like you to do is to take that outline that you've written and turn that into prose. Basically turn that into just a structured set of paragraphs that explain what you're going to be doing in each of those pieces. And once you're ready to then publish your course for marketing purposes, doing this syllabus in prose now is going to save you a lot of headache later down the road, because then you're going to have the short, simple outline-based sentences for some platforms, but then you're going to have the longer form content description that you're going to need for other platforms that are going to want that kind of rich data for you to be able to write out. So part of this is SEO, but part of this is also just making sure that you have the right text and the right content ready for you there so far. All right. Let me know if you have any questions so far. I'm happy to answer any questions. I just see some comments. Great. Everybody's on board so far. Great. All right. Next up is talking a little bit about what you will need as it relates to running your first online course. I have a tendency to believe that people just overcomplicate this so often, and so I try to simplify things down to just the bare minimum of what you will need in order to make a first online course happen. So it's first and foremost, from a hardware perspective, really to be able to do a 5-week online course in real time with people, you will need, from a hardware perspective, 3 things. You will need a broadband, high-speed broadband internet access, and I highly recommend, I cannot more highly recommend that you do hardwire. So if you get Cat 5e, Cat 6, whatever cabling, it's like $10 on Amazon, or at your local hardware store, maybe we'll have this. But in essence, you can plug directly into your computer, and if your computer doesn't have a Cat 5e port, that RJ45 port, then you can actually get adapters that will plug in USB, USB-A, USB-C, right? So you might have to get a little adapter. But once you plug into your router, physically into your router, that means that your internet issues will be like substantially reduced. I mean, really, your internet in the whole house or office would have to go down at that point for you to lose connectivity when you were delivering an online course. The reason why I really want you to do this in terms of hardwired is because at the back end of the course, I think you should sell your online course as a recording. So if you are going to do your online course in a real-time perspective, that's not where the online course begins and ends. If you do this effectively and you record the course as you do it, as you present the course, then at the end of the 5 weeks, the 5 weeks, I recorded all of my Evernote masterclasses. And so now I have 5 weeks of content that I can now sell if I want to. And so you get best of both worlds. One, I believe that transformation is something that requires people to invest in, and if they know that they have to show up in real time, they're much more likely to take a course, and that cohort is also working together, and so that's also a positive, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But your real goal here is to get people to engage with you, and if you have any technical problems like internet trip up or those kinds of things as a presenter, as the facilitator of a course, that becomes much more problematic. It doesn't matter if one of your members, one of your participants in a course has an internet problem and they can't access your data, but it really hurts if you as the presenter go dark in the middle of a presentation, especially if you're recording it. So I highly recommend that you are hardwired to the system. Next up, of course, is you have to have a computer, laptop, or high-end tablet like an iPad or iPad Pro or something like that that's going to allow you to be able to connect to the internet effectively and present your material as well as audio and video there, which leads me to the third point, which is having just a really good webcam. And with that, I would say that all of the various webcams that are out there are decent today, as if they're 720p to 1080p in terms of resolution. You're going to be pretty good in terms of just looking good on camera as well as having effective audio. I do recommend that if you do use a webcam like that and your laptop or computer or otherwise has speakers, use headphones. Like I have headphones on right now, and that allows me to isolate any sound that might be coming out of my computer that I don't want you to hear, right? Like when I'm speaking, I want you to hear my voice, and I don't want you to hear any of the background or ambient noise that's happening around me. Certainly you don't want to hear the binging and dinging of the computer while you're presenting. Certainly someone after the fact who's watching the recording doesn't want to hear that either. And so putting on headphones is just a really good way to, one, isolate your background noises from the computer. But it also, for me, by putting on those headphones, it isolates the stuff around me. So there may be minor noises that are happening in my periphery that, it's just what it is. There's room noise, room sound, bounce, whatever it might be. But those are now isolated because I have those headphones on. And so I'm pretty, clued in to working with you right now, as opposed to being distracted by other things that could be going on around me. So hardwire your internet. Good computer that can withstand the test of time throughout the course, and then of course good audio and video for you to be able to deliver the course. Now you could and should probably decide whether or not you're going to go ahead and be on camera for any portions of it. I tend to feel like during a presentation, it's not as helpful to be on camera unless you are demonstrating something. And when you are doing Q&A though, to come onto camera for those purposes as well. So it just depends, like in my own webinars, usually for these, I'm not on camera because it's not necessary in my view. But for some folks where you want to establish rapport, like especially if you're trying to sell to people a future program or a future package, you may want to have some FaceTime with those people. Letting them see you and get to know you by watching the presentation and seeing your face is actually a way for them to establish rapport with you, and that could be really helpful down the pike. But we'll get to more of that in a short bit when we talk about community. All right, so we go from hardware to then some of our software needs. And this is where things get a little bit more difficult, but they're not that difficult that you can't do this. So first and foremost, you need some kind of video meeting software. And I've put some recommendations in the slide deck here for you. And so as I noted at the beginning, before we started the recording, I will be sending to those of you who registered the link to this presentation, and inside the speaker notes are links to things and resources. So anything that I talked about, there's resources in there for you. And so first and foremost, you would need some kind of video meeting software. This can be as easy as getting a bespoke webinar software. There is, all kinds of webinar software out there. And then you can also just use a meeting software, a video meeting software like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, which would come with your Microsoft Office 365 license most likely, or Google Meet, which would come with your Google Workspace license. So if you need either of those types of licenses, talk to us at W3C Web Services and we'll be happy to help you get those. But those are caked into it. And the reason why I recommend those three most often is because it allows you to interact with your audience, depending upon the size of your audience. But even then, you really want to be able to, have people speak, come on stage, do certain things in certain environments. And in that kind of online course environment, it can be really nice to be able to have people come on, talk about their issues, and help them with their transformation and use them as examples in the presentation itself. So choosing your video meeting software or the webinar software that you're going to use is really important so that you can make sure you have the right experience for what you're trying to do. There are also software that allow for people to have small group sessions, basically breakout rooms. Zoom, Google Meet, and Microsoft Teams all have that breakout room facility. And there are also tools that allow you to have basically a floor plan where people can kind of roam around in the floor plan and pick among the various kind of tables and chairs and areas that they're walking around in and talk to each other. So if you have like a networking function available, or if you want people to have kind of milling around time, maybe a software like Remo or otherwise would be good for you in that sense. Spatial Chat does that, Wonder.me. There's several software that are out there. You want to design your online course so that people have the opportunity to connect with each other, and we'll talk about that in a bit as well. Next up is having good presentation software, and there are two pretty much de facto standards in presentation software, and that is Microsoft PowerPoint, and that of course comes within the Microsoft 365 environment, and then you have Google Slides, which also comes within the Google Workspace environment, whether that be now on the consumer side or on the Google Workspace business side. And so I'm using Google Slides right within Google Workspace, so I'm presenting to you from Google Slides inside of the webinar tool, and so you're able to actually see what's on my screen, and I can manipulate. I can go back and forward in slides. It's just simple stuff, and that's pretty much all you need in terms of displaying content for purposes of the course. Now you can get much fancier. You can use tools like Prezi Video. There are other kinds of presentation tools out there. If in my case I was teaching Evernote, so I had not just slides, but I also then had to demo the product. Fun fact, if you're going to demo anything, I highly recommend that you actually pre-record anything that is software related. So if you're going to teach a piece of software, I highly recommend that you just record, do a screencast of that technology, and then you can play that video and talk over it in your webinar or video meeting software, so that you do not have those kinds of hiccups that happen. And they do happen, and they happened in my online course quite frequently, because we were dealing with a fairly new piece of software at the time. Evernote 10 was a full rewrite of the software, and so it was just dealing with, okay, this is a bug, okay, where did that feature go? Some of those things were just a little bit less refined because the software was new and we were all getting used to it together. So just kind of a quick tip there to don't try and do too many live demos while you're doing that. But if you're showing something like, if you have a product or a service, you can come onto camera and show that to folks in real time, and that can be really, really useful. And of course, you're recording this, so everyone thereafter who would be watching it is capable of accessing that as well. You have some choices now. Once you have the meeting software as well as your presentation software, those two pieces out the gate give you the ability to not only record, but also share those decks, the presentations, after the fact, if you want to be able to provide those. Now, included with that, for marketing purposes, but also pricing purposes, think about how you price your course. So if it's a free course, it's free. But you can also then sell the recordings with the slide decks, and also any templates or other kinds of materials that you create as collateral pieces to that course. So it's all of those pieces together that end up helping you understand pricing, along with a couple of other things that we're going to talk about. Next is email, and email is really important to making sure that you are communicating with your audience. So you need to utilize your email software, and this depends on whether you use webinar software or another tool that can collect email addresses, but most often than not, what you're going to want to do is to have people register utilizing an email sign-up form using your email marketing service provider, your EMSP. So whether that be MailChimp or Constant Contact or MailerLite or otherwise, you're going to actually create your sign-up for the course in that tool if it's free. Now, if it's for a fee or a premium course, then you're going to have someone go ahead and sign up for that using some other portal like Eventbrite or otherwise. They're going to pay. You're going to automate some kind of connection between Eventbrite and your email marketing software using a tool like Zapier that's going to put your new participants for the course into your email subscriber list, and then you now have the ability to communicate with them, because you need to be communicating with your audience leading up to the course. You cannot just throw up a page and then don't communicate with them at all until they show up on the day of. You want to be able to send them a few messages beforehand to prepare them for the course, just like a professor prepares their students before they start for the semester. You might want to send 1, 2, or 3 email messages. 1 is just a reminder, because people forget that they signed up for these things, and 2, to be able to get them primed for being fully prepared and ready to show up for this particular course. It gets them excited. It gets them to want to talk to their friends and family about it who also might end up taking the course. And so it's really important that you have an effective email marketing service provider set up and that you draft some emails to get people ready for the event upcoming. Last but not least is actually is not optional in my book, but it may be optional in yours. But I really believe that one of the most important components of your course, your first online course, is to build up people who will want to give testimonials, who will want to connect in some other way. And you really do need some place to put people during the course so that you're able to share materials, so that you're able to answer questions and so on and so forth without getting a bunch of emails being sent to you without anyone else being able to see that material. If someone asks a question, you want to be able to answer that once, and that way it answers it for everybody who happens to be in that cohort. And so I believe in having some kind of community platform that goes ahead and allows you to do that. Now, my favorite of all time is Mighty Networks, and I've been using Mighty Networks for my own business and for my own Evernote course. I did it completely in Mighty Networks, and it was just really great to be able to have people ask questions inside of a platform, and then when someone has a question, I answer it once, and now everybody in the community has access to that both question and answer, and it really helps to streamline the operations and makes it much more efficient for everybody. What I believe is that your course is really only as good as the community that you build around it. And this is the power of something like Mighty Networks. Mighty Networks gives you a community, and then you can create the course inside of that community. Now, in this particular case, there's 3 different plans. There's technically 4 plans in Mighty Networks, but there's a free plan, then there's a community plan, and then a business plan, and then there's a pro plan. But in the free plan, you can just create the course, and you can have a private and paid group, and that group, of course, is then where you're going to have your course for paid folks. If you're doing the course for free, then it's just people joining the Mighty Network, and you can do everything in the main community space. Either way, your community is really fundamentally important for a number of reasons here. Your first online course is going to really help you market your next course and the course after that, and so on and so forth. Or if you want to repeat that course in the future, you want to be able to collect testimonials. You want people who are going to take your course again, or you're going to take your next course when you want to publish that. And by getting people who can get excited, who are joining in with each other and learning together, having their transformation together, that really just makes it more potent. I felt the energy of having people together in this virtual space, and they were able to not only ask good questions, but also help each other. So many times, someone else got to answering a question for somebody faster than I did. And I was also able to post the recordings of the course in that community space so people could access it there securely without it being published to the world. And so I ended up using Vimeo, and in Vimeo, you can actually, unlike YouTube, you can say in Vimeo, I only want this thing to be on this particular page and embedded in this page so that it only plays from this specific domain. So I could list in my domain of my community, and so it couldn't be taken someplace else and played. It was really securely inside of that particular community space. This was really, really helpful to be able to have that video posted, have people comment and question and do all they need to do right there. And for me to post, I had templates that I had shared and other materials and links. All of that went inside of the community space in that course, and that really centralized the material for everyone. Now, there were 5 weeks, and so there were a total of 10 videos per each course. So it was just very simple. We had each of those pieces, we set up events for them, and then we posted the material in the space as they were recorded. So I really think that if you were going to launch an online course, think about the community that's going to be spurred beyond the course, because at the end of the day, now you have this group of people who know, like, trust, respect you, and now you can do more with them. You can sell them on your services, sell more products to them, take them to the next level in terms of what is the next course after your first syllabus comes, guess what, your second syllabus, right? And so what are you teaching them in your second syllabus, and can you start priming them for taking that next course afterward? And that's actually what I did, right? Because I had designed the Evernote course in beginner, intermediate, and advanced, it turned out that the beginner fit technically 7 sessions in 5 weeks, but the idea was that then the next 5 weeks would be for the intermediate, and the next 5 weeks would be for the advanced. And in that first cohort, we had the most people because they were certainly all wanting to learn the basics in the beginner material. And each of the subsequent ones, we had a slightly smaller group. But it was a really effective way of having new people cycle in and new people cycle out, and old people cycle out from each of those intermediate and advanced courses, because, of course, those people didn't want to learn the intermediate and advanced. They weren't yet ready for that. But now that they're recorded, they could always go back and take those courses self-study, because they're recorded and available to them at that point. Okay, so last but not least is, of course, how do you promote these kinds of online courses? It's a challenge for everyone. It's difficult. There's no question about it. But there are some things that we can do to increase the efficacy of our marketing and our promotions of those courses. First and foremost, as I talked about already, pricing is important. Making sure that you know what you're going to be charging, and then figuring out whether or not the price for the course is a stepping stone toward some other product or service or package you're selling for the business. And the way I think about it is this person important enough to me that I want them on my list, or do I need to vet these people because of the demographic I'm going after, so to speak, that I need to actually make them pay a little bit of something so that I'm separating the wheat from the chaff? Because if the only people coming to me are people who are willing to just take things because they're free, then they're not particularly useful to me at the end of the day, because I need paying customers. I don't need people who just want only free things from me. So then you get to make a differentiator, right? Some of you will think, oh, well, it's my first time. I'm not sure how well it's going to go. So I'm just going to make it a free one and do it. I highly don't recommend that. And I say that fully understanding that some of you will feel like, okay, I really need to make money from this course, but I also don't feel confident in the material I'm going to be presenting. And all I can say to you is preparation begets great presentations, right? Great preparation begets great presentations. And so you just need to make sure that before you go online, you prepare enough to be able to present. And people are looking for transformative information. Transformative doesn't need to mean super fancy, highly polished material. It just needs to be substantive, such that when you teach it, they go from where they were to some stage next to where they want to go, right? It's about helping them step up a step, not do the whole staircase at once. It's getting them up a few steps, and getting them up a few steps is further than they would have gone by themselves, and that's what they're paying you for. So I recommend, even if it's a small amount, right? $27, $37, $197. You can do high-end premium first online courses as well. You can charge $2,000 to $3,000 per course for your time investment. You have to decide on that, especially based on the volume of people that will also be in attendance. I tend to think about pricing as the price goes up as the fewer people that will be in the course with me. If I'm going to give you more one-to-one attention and more time, then I'm going to charge more. And if I'm going to do something that is very large audience, where I'm going to have several thousand people in my courses for some period of time, then I don't really need to charge every person as much, because the aggregate is going to give me the same amount of money for that. So more people, usually less pricing, because I'm not going to be able to give every person as much one-to-one time. And then as I get more one-to-one time, I'm going to increase the price so that I can limit that and make sure that I have enough time to be able to spend on people. I'm going to do an advanced course and I'm going to be showing some really sophisticated stuff. Then I can't have 10,000 people in the course, because then I'm not going to be able to teach that to each person and cover their myriad issues that are going to come up when they hit an inevitable snag in technology or in their marketing strategy. Okay, so with that under the belt, I tend to think about promoting your courses as something that happens all the time, and we talk about this in marketing as tentpole marketing, which is why the circus tent here. But the tentpole really covers and encompasses three parts of an event. There is the before, that is the part that's leading up to the apex or the top of the circus tent. Then there's the event itself, which is that, and then there's the time that happens after the event, right? So we need to understand tentpole marketing as we're marketing your course all the time. It's not just before the event and then you host the event and it's over. You've got to be marketing your event, promoting your event, that is the course, the entire time, even while the course is happening. Because even if you have people who say that you decide, okay, once we register for the first session, nobody can join after that, right? But those are people that can go onto your wait list for the next course. So there's no reason for you to not be marketing your course the entire time. As soon as you decide you're gonna start the course, then you have basically a timeline in place, which is to start about a month or two before the course is to go online. You're going to go out there and you're going to set up a marketing strategy for how you're going to get people aware of that. Now, of course, if you have an email list, start with your email list. If you have a social media following, then you want to get your message out to the social media followers, and that's going to require a number of messages. I usually like to take the rule of a month, 2 weeks, a week, a day, and then the day of, right? So you're basically sending 5 messages to folks about registering leading up to, for people who already follow you. That is, those are the people who know, like, and trust you. Those 5 messages, a month before, 2 weeks before, a week before, the day before, and the day of, or the morning of, you're gonna let folks know so that they have enough reminders, because life is busy, people are distracted, and they're just not paying attention many times. So these number of reminders really help people understand that there's something going on there. Oh, you know what? I heard that Ray was going to do this course. He sent a message a few weeks ago. I totally forgot. Oh, it's tomorrow. Okay, let me register. And then all of a sudden you have this spike of registrations that happen really the day before an event happens. 2 to 3 days before the event is usually when you have most of those registrations happen. And so a month or two before, I usually say that you're going to see a number of people register for the people who already follow you. If you already have a following, you're going to see a third of those people basically registered, and then the other 2/3 are going to register about a day or two before the session begins. So you really see what you're going to get. So if you have 100 people on your email list, right, and 10 people register on the first one on a month, right, the day you announce it. That means that you'll have about 30 people of those 100 who will likely fully register and attend your course at the end of the day. Okay, so you can give that as kind of a general rule of thumb for how many people will, from your own following, that is social, email, or otherwise, where you have direct access, SMS, MMS kind of messaging. So then beyond that, you have to then really go into thinking about where you are posting your event to get greater coverage. So I think about this from kind of 3 or 4 different camps. First and foremost are event marketplaces. There are a number of event marketplaces for you to be able to post about your course, and the biggest of them, of course, is Eventbrite, but that's not actually the biggest one, as I'll say in a little while. But right now, in terms of event marketplaces, Eventbrite is kind of the granddaddy, the grandmother of event locations. People go there. I know I do. I browse the events that are on Eventbrite, and event discovery is really easy on Eventbrite, and so people can find your event without even knowing you. Some platforms have their own event marketplaces. For example, most folks don't know this, but Zoom itself has a platform that is in beta right now called On Zoom. So if you go to on.zoom.us, you can actually go in and find this marketplace. You can host your own events. You can charge for your events there, and then of course there are people who are going there to look for events who know it exists, and so you can actually do all of that there. But you want to go to places where people are already posting events and where other people are looking for them. Another big place that you can go to is Facebook Local. Most people don't know about this, but there is an application called Facebook Local for both iOS and Android, and this is like a slice of the Facebook application. So you can find this inside of Facebook proper, but there's actually a separate bespoke application dedicated to finding out about events and things happening in local environments. And so remember to take advantage of what I consider kind of the hometown advantage, right? People are much more likely to buy from you if they know you are near them. And it's like having the hometown team, right? We are more likely to root for our local team than we are for a team that is further away from us. People will be more likely to attend your course because, oh, you know what? You're in Cincinnati, I'm in Cincinnati. I'll give you a try, right? Or if I'm in Roanoke, Virginia, and you're in Roanoke, Virginia, I'll give you a try. So the idea here is to basically place your events both on the non-geographic map, but also putting your events into geographic or regional local event calendars. There are also a wide variety of event calendars. You could have a professional association that has an event calendar. There are business publications that have event calendars. There are all kinds of places where events are published. Make sure that you take advantage of those, not just wherever you set up your registration. Now, this takes us to why I kind of said at the beginning Eventbrite isn't probably the largest one, because there is Google. And Google actually has a very large event component. Now, this is basically publishing events to Google, and you can actually do this in a number of different ways. In this slide deck are instructions on how to do this. But if you want to, in essence, like if you have WordPress and you're using one of the event plugins within WordPress, you actually are automatically seeding Google with events. And so this is very, very powerful. But for example, if you're using Eventbrite, Eventbrite automatically syndicates their Google their events to Google for indexing. And so then people will be able to find your events just by doing searches for things on Google. So you can see here, this sample says concerts in Chicago. And what Google does is it goes ahead and pulls up all of those items. Now remember, Google is doing this based on looking at certain criteria. Location, right? Which is why I said, make sure you are posting your events in local areas because people are more likely to find things. Like if I type in, marketing workshop in Alexandria, Virginia, I'm much more likely to find one of my workshops if I've posted it in an Alexandria business calendar than if someone just typed in marketing workshop, right? It's very unlikely that people are going to find my online event where anyone from anywhere could technically attend, but they're not going to find it because they're not seeing it in that space because they're not local. So make sure that you localize your content and you're much more likely to be found in these places. But either way, this Search Central article and the link to it is in this slide deck. It has the information for you to be able to understand where you can get your events seeded into Google. Now, of course, beyond Google, of course, is then going to ads. I'm going to just say it. You will likely need to run ads. I just don't see many ways around it if you don't have a large enough following yourself, and if you are not getting enough traction. I would say that if you have your email list or your SMS list or your social following and you post and you don't see enough people register in that first couple of days after you have posted, then your next best bet is to post your event to your Facebook event as a Facebook event on your Facebook page, or posting it on LinkedIn as a LinkedIn event, and then immediately turning those into ads from those platforms for being able to start pushing ads to get people to register. It's just a fact of running a business, is that sometimes you got to pay in order to get a return on it. And so that means that you need to be charging for your event enough to compensate for the ads, the ad budget that you're going to need to be able to bring in enough people. And that's usually a week by week thing. Like you see in the first week you run ads, you see how many people converted, and then you can then do the math. Okay, well, I want this many people to convert, therefore I need to basically adjust both my pricing of the course, but also how much ad budget I put in, what we call ad spend, how much ad spend I put into the campaign for that particular online course. So there's a little bit of an experiment and learning process as you make your way toward your course launch date. So you may need to run ads. Inside of this slide also are a list of several places where you can go ahead and run ads. That includes Google and Microsoft ads on the Bing search engine. That includes social networks, also Hulu and TikTok, which is the newest of the social networks that are out there. You can basically put ads in so many different places. I've found great success in running Instagram ads, and so especially for our webinars. And so many of you might actually be inside of the webinar tool. Many of you probably came from a webinar from the advertisement we sent from Instagram. And so we pushed that event page to Instagram ads through Facebook, and so you probably saw the ad and signed up from there. So a lot of you probably attended from that, because I see quite a number of you here in the webinar side of things. And so that's a way to get people to show up to events, is to run those ads. So don't discount ads there. Also know that Eventbrite has their own event discovery ads where you can actually push emails out to folks. Another area that you can go into is a platform called Alignable, especially if you're focused on B2B or B2SMB. Alignable.com is a small business social network. And when you join the platform, you can actually send emails to specific geographic newsletters that they send out. So they can, if you're in, say, Houston, Texas, you can say, I want to send this out to, these 5,000 businesses that are in Houston, and they will actually then put your event and shoot it out to those folks for a fee. And it's usually a pretty nominal amount of money to get that blast. Now, remember, it's just one touch point. So you're just getting one ad shown in one email, but it can be pretty effective if your event, your course is going to be interesting for them. You may decide to push that newsletter, that email out to them several times so that you get someone who maybe saw one email but didn't see the others, and therefore they get multiple touch points before the event happens. But just do not discount ads. Okay, so back to the tentpole, right? We know that we have to promote our course a month or two before. Of course, 1 to 2 days before, we now are going to have our major push. Remember that most people are last minute. Right? Most people are going to be very last minute about things. So not only, like we talked about before, the people who follow you both on email, SMS, and social, you're pushing those messages, those 5 messages we talked about. But for everybody else, note that you're going to be putting most of your ad dollars into these last 2 days before, 1 to 2 days before your course starts. Most people are going to be pressured, feel that time pressure to register when they know something is immediately going to happen. Now, this is very different for a physical in-person course or a vacation or something. Those people are not going to, book their hotel and airline and everything else the day before they have a trip. But for online courses, a lot of people they don't have to go anywhere, right? They just have to log in. So they are much more likely, like with webinars, most people who register and attend our webinars do so the day before, sometimes 2 days before, if we're lucky, right? So we don't know how many people are really going to attend until a day or two before the webinar. And the reason for that is because people are just last minute, okay? So know that you're going to be putting the majority of your energy into those 1 to 2 days before the course is happening. That also means that you are preparing to deliver your course just a couple of days before, doing any refinement or fine-tuning of your course materials at the same time. So you may want to have some help in the marketing side to make sure that you're preparing for the course at the same time you are promoting the course as well. But that doesn't end there, as we talked about. Once you get to 1 to 2 days, before the course, then your course begins, right? And that's all delivery of the material. But on the promotion side, do not stop promoting. As I said, people who are going to come in afterward, they may decide they want to jump in after the fact. And if you're recording them, as I suggest you do, now people who have joined you after the fact, they can just watch the recordings and then jump into the live sessions as they were with you, right? So that's a really good mechanism. Okay, you joined 2 weeks late. Here goes last week and the week before that's recordings, and now you can catch up by watching those, and then you can join us in the next third session this coming week. And so people don't lose continuity there. They have to do a little bit of work to catch up, but they can. Then of course you could decide that this is cohort based, and after we get to the first session, I really don't want to deal with people who are late. Then you create a separate page where people can waitlist, right? We have sold out, we've run out of tickets, whatever it is that you want to say. But if you want to take our next course, then add your email here, and now you can start capturing those emails and preparing your messaging for those folks so that you can let them know when the next course is that you're going to be happening. And it doesn't end there, right? Tentpole Marketing says that, say that you do your 5 weeks of courses, right? You've completed your course. It's been a grand success. Well, you are going to continue in the weeks following your course. You want to make sure that you are continuing to engage with those people. That's why I really love the idea of launching something like a Mighty Networks community, so that you have those people together and they can continue to keep engaging with each other, but also with you after the fact. So this is also an email. Remember that if you're not sending people email, they forget that you exist, and then they unsubscribe at higher rates. So we want to make sure that we're continuing to email those folks as well as engaging with them in the community, and that makes them primed for your next course, right? Because beyond your first online course is your second online course. Some people will want to retake your course. And what I've done is I've decided that if you've taken, in this Evernote example, if you've taken the Evernote course once, then you're automatically grandfathered into the next one. So if I do decide, and I haven't decided, to teach this a second time, then you would automatically be grandfathered in. What's great is that, that was a pretty big crowd. And so if they're all already grandfathered in, that means I'm going to get quite a few of them who would probably attend a second time. And that means there's already a good number of people who will be showing up each week to that, which means any newcomers to it will also see a large crowd. And that's going to, of course, bring more people to engage in the community. And because when people are engaging in the community, they're like, oh, this is a party. I want to be at this, party. This party is really jamming, right? So people like to be in a place where there's lots of activity. And during those kinds of large cohort-based events, you have a lot of people interacting at that time, and that could be really good for you because, everybody likes somebody who can host a good party. So those weeks following your first online course are really important. You want to basically strategically map out what messages you want to send to people. And if the transformation you take people is getting them to a stage and then they need to hire you, right? They need to hire you as a coach, hire you as a consultant, or buy your product or service in order to get themselves across the finish line. Now is the time to be letting them know that, hey, this is in existence. You took my course and I want to know where you are, how you're doing, and if you need help and facilitation to get to that next step, these are the things I know that can get you there. So this is the time to send them any complimentary materials that you have that help them close out the course, thanking them for joining you and letting them know about future courses. Okay, so with that, we have reached the top of our time together. We talked about what you will teach in terms of developing that first online course, what you need in order to teach your online course. I hope it's not too much, right? I think 6 things is not terribly difficult. I think 7 things if you include the community, and then of course promoting your course. I'm going to answer some questions and then we are going to close out. And so first and foremost, if you do need to log out, I know we're at the top of the hour, so if you do need to log out, there goes my contact information. Feel free to screen grab that, and then I'm going to answer some questions because I see those in the webinar question panel, and I know we have a few people in Zoom with me, so feel free, if you are in Zoom, just throw those in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer any questions for those of you who are joining me via the Zoom meeting room as well. So so let's go back to, hopefully everybody has grabbed the screenshot for my contact information. If anybody didn't, let me know and I can snap back over there. But either way, so I've got several questions. I'm going to try and give us a few minutes of answering questions, and then we're going to close out. So first and foremost, so I had mentioned some community platforms, and of course my big one is Mighty Networks, but there are others. So to answer the question is, are there other community platforms that I recommend? And so, yeah, there are many, many others. Circle.so is actually a really great platform as well. They're a competitor to Mighty Networks. If you have a WordPress website, or if you have a website that has the component of being able to build your own email forum or those kinds of things, absolutely go ahead and use that. You don't need a really highly sophisticated, social network platform in order to be able to create community. It could be as easy as launching a Google group within Google Workspace, using a Slack group, launching a Discord server. All of these are very easy, and it's just a private place where you can post things and share things with others. So I like Mighty Networks because you are building a community, and that means each time you host a course, you have more and more people coming onto the platform, and that means more people to sell to over time, right? But you don't need to necessarily, run a full-fledged community for the course if you feel like you need something just a little bit more lightweight. There's even Telegram, and you could do a WhatsApp group. I don't highly recommend you going to something like a Facebook group or otherwise. It's just a bleeding of your branding, because you just have a tendency to lose control of your audience. I want your community to be a place where you can control it, and not where Facebook or others can control it, right? We're spending money on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and otherwise to get people off of those platforms and to get those eyeballs on our business. So I really don't like the idea of us then going back there and saying, okay, well, now let me create a LinkedIn group and collect everybody there, where LinkedIn controls it or Facebook controls it or otherwise. Okay. I'm getting some questions about the meeting technologies. So again, in the slide deck, I have a list of those, so you'll have links to all of those. But in essence, the criteria for it is that you want to make sure it is something where the number of people who are going to attend your course, you can scale up to that number. So for example, I had to scale up my Zoom account to the 500 attendee level, because we had about 400 or so people who had registered for that first course, right? So I wanted to make sure I could fit everybody comfortably in that space and have still the controls necessary to make sure that we had a comfortable thing. And so that was just one thing. Making sure that you have all of the features that you need in order to make sure you can deliver it. So for example, if you don't need to share your screen, or if you don't need anything else, you're just going to be on camera for those things, then maybe you don't need some of those fancier technologies. Most of them allow you to be able to screen share, but you may want something that helps you to control, people being able to speak and all those other kinds of things along the way. So again, it just look at the ones that are in the slides, and then if you really run into a problem, hopefully you took down my email, and just go ahead and reply to my email when I send you the slide deck afterward, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have there. Someone's asking about the email marketing service providers, which is my favorite. I am a big fan of MailerLite. MailerLite. And so MailerLite is just, I think, phenomenal. It's how I did the online course, because the base level course, the first course I did, was actually free with a premium course attached to it. That's a little bit more complicated than I want to get into today, but I did a freemium baseline and then a premium add-on where people could register, and then of course add on additional stuff beyond that. But remember, I highly recommend you charge for your course out the gate. Even if it's something nominal, that means that people are willing to pay you for your services, and there's a psychological component to that that's really important. But I'm a really big fan of MailerLite. I'm also a big fan of Drip. I think Drip is just a really great email marketing platform, and it includes, chatbots and other kinds of things. I'm seeing a question about Skillshare. So I don't particularly like Skillshare because they are a pooled learning platform. So, say for example, you launch a course on Skillshare, you make a percentage of the number of people who sign up for Skillshare and take your course, or the number of people who are already Skillshare members and take your course. So if you do that, then you're going to make a very small amount of money unless you have a very large audience that you are bringing to Skillshare who will continually take your courses for them. You're in essence, it's not a Ponzi scheme. But it is a pyramid scheme, right? So Skillshare's whole notion is to get more and more members, because more members in Skillshare begets more dollars for them, and the bigger the share of the pie that they have in terms of members of Skillshare, then they can concentrate those members to take your courses because they're paying. But for you as the course publisher, you are then already on the platform, and if people decide to take other courses, you get a very slim piece of that pie. So I tend not to be a big fan of Skillshare for that perspective. And see, it looks like you're saying, secondary question here, how about converting their members into our network? I see a lot of YouTube. See a lot of YouTubers do that. Yes, absolutely. So if I think I understand what you're saying here, is that converting members into your network in terms of, are you talking about Skillshare specifically, or just using social for that? If you could clarify for me. I'm not sure I understand your question now that I've read it. I'm going to wait for you to clarify, and then I'll circle back to that question. I'm going to answer 2 more questions, and then we're going to close out from the webinar chat here. So folks are asking about transformations, and I see several questions about transformations. I'll give a little bit more in terms of that. So what I mean by transformation is that people are going to be changed in some positive way by having taken your first online course. It could be simple as learning how to tie your shoelaces using the bunny knot system, right? Like, it could be super simple. If you grew up into adulthood and you have never really learned how to ride a bike, right? You're going to have a lot of fear and shame associated with that. But what you don't want to do is teach a course on how to do, advanced bicycling tricks, and parkour on your bike techniques in that same first online course. That's an advanced course, and you don't want to shove everything into that course, because that person who's just learning to ride their bike, and they need some skills development. They need some time to get themselves going. So the transformation is literally just like getting on your bike and staying upright for cycling purposes, just like cycling generally. Then you can teach another course later on down the road that teaches people how to, do some other tricks on the bike, and then ultimately doing some advanced, tricks on the bike. So getting people to just do the very basics is fundamentally where you're going to get most of your people. And over time, those people who stick with you will transform at the end into advanced users. So the transformation at the beginning is wherever they are, helping them get to the next step. And most people are not in the advanced space. So you're going to have a much bigger pool of people to work with in order to then be able to work with long-term over the course of several courses, and they become huge brand advocates. All right, so going back to this other question. So, from Skillshare to YouTube, absolutely, yes. So the things you have to think about this, and this goes into play, so I'm going back to the question about Skillshare and converting members into YouTube and otherwise. So the goal there is to make sure that like with Udemy, Udemy, Skillshare, otherwise, most of those platforms actually have an agreement whereby if you post on that platform, you really can't take it down afterward, right? So it becomes permanent. So your first online course can be useful if you put it there, but remember that it's going to be there forever. And so you can shut it down, you can delist it in some way, shape, or form, but the people who joined at that point will forever be on there, certainly on Udemy. So that could be a problem for some business owners where they don't want to have to maintain courses in multiple places over the long term. So just keep that in mind on one level. But yeah, because there are a lot of quote unquote buyers, these are premium members of Skillshare. They're paying to be on the platform. They're ideal for you being able to convert them over to becoming YouTube subscribers or joining your email list. What you need to do in that first course is make it very brief and short, and also making sure that you are having a call to action whereby they get something for giving up their contact information to join you in someplace outside of that. Now, I wouldn't do YouTube as much. I would probably go to email list, right? Because you control their email, you control the SMS list of people that are permission based, allowing you into their system. So I would really recommend you thinking through that in that sense for from like a Skillshare or Udemy or other platforms like that. You want to really get them to your email, and then from there you now control the relationship with those people, and you can execute emails out to folks there as well. Okay, we have gone over time, so I'm going to answer any other questions that folks have. I will try to answer those via email to you in the webinar panel. So thank you all for the really great questions. Thank you for attending today's session, launching your first online course. I'm Ray Sidney Smith, and I hope you all have a great first online course. Let me know. You can tweet at me, email me, let me know once you do launch your first online course. I'd love to see what you all put together. And with that, take care. Have a great day, everybody.